Welcome to In Presence We Trust, a podcast about the art and heart of holding group transformational spaces. I'm Rachel Rickards, founder of the Field Facilitator Training and host and creator of this podcast. I'm so excited. Like right now, I can just feel my body is tingling and there's tons of energy moving. I am so thrilled about what this podcast is now and is continuing to become. I'm so touched by all of the viewers who send me messages and let me know that you're listening and let me know what's touching you and provoking you. And yeah, I just want to keep saying thank you for listening. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for letting me know that you love this space. And also thank you for asking for what you want. So I'm very open to suggestions, especially around who I'll be interviewing next. I'm really excited to share this next episode with you all. It was super fun talking to Mr. Aaron Kleinerman, and he is a beloved peer and someone who I'm really inspired by. One of the first people who I met who's probably doing more than I am. You'll learn pretty soon in this podcast about Aaron. He's doing 101 million amazing things. He's a transformational coach, a Tantra and sacred sexuality group facilitator. He's also a podcast host. I'll be appearing on his podcast in a few weeks. He's a best-selling author. He's going to be now becoming a community steward. I mean, the list goes on and on. There isn't anything he hasn't done and probably not much he won't do. So I'm so excited. This conversation is fantastic, and I'm even more excited for the deepening in the next level conversation we'll have together. In the conversation that you're about to hear, we talk about a lot of new changes that are entering into Aaron's life. We also get to know a little bit about Aaron's career start in spiritual psychotherapy. He's a fellow American like myself who now lives mostly internationally and abroad. And he's recently started preparing a facilitator training of his own. I think Aaron has a very special niche in teaching practitioners of Tantra and sacred sexuality healing sessions. He has an amazing trauma-informed and trauma-trained perspective and background that he brings into his sacred sexuality work, which is so needed. So in addition to all of that, we talk about receiving projections as a facilitator, both the positive ones and maybe also the challenging ones, and how to navigate that, both in the role of being a group facilitator with participants, but also like in our personal lives when people who know of him or me or us receive those projections and what to do with them, how to meet them. We also talk about big word integrity as a facilitator, particularly for Aaron being a man and someone who leads fields or group work that has to do with sexuality and talking about sex and the incredible power that gets placed on these individuals and how to navigate that. So if you're ready, there's a lot here. There's so much. So get ready, buckle your seatbelts, and join me by taking a deep breath. I'm actually really excited for this conversation and maybe a little nervous. Like I can feel that there's some heat in my face and my heart's beating, and I don't know why that's happening, but I'm a little nervous to talk to you.
Amazing. Thank you for acknowledging your nervousness. You're welcome here. You're welcome in presence.
Yeah, and I think I'm also just excited to talk to you because you're, I don't know, a certain level and resonance of peer where I'm like, oh, we're gonna get to geek out together. And then that makes me really excited. So there's that as well. you've been recently starting to write some beautiful posts. I don't know what to call them, shares. Been doing some beautiful writings about facilitation and about how you see different kinds of facilitation. And I've been like, oh, yeah, this, I love it. Yeah, more. And so it was like, yeah, perfect moment to speak as you start to share more publicly around some of the shadows and who you are as a facilitator and what you see happening in this community. And yeah, so I hope and I imagine we'll dive into a lot of that today.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a joy to be here with you.
I'm curious already about the changes in your life. What's happening that matches this letting go moment?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, two big changes. I've been finalizing a new home in Bali. That's just about done within the next couple weeks or so, which is super exciting. That's been a project a long time coming. That's very exciting. I wrote it. I mean, I built it as basically a writer's sanctuary. It's where I wrote my first book, and I wanted to have a home in the jungle away from everything where I can just have full rest and rejuvenation time and really be one with nature. So
Mm,
it's a beautiful home for that. I'll be back there
mm,
in January to have some restful time for my often busy traveling schedule. So
mm.
um, that's one big. And then kind of simultaneously, the universe has brought in this amazing community retreat center project in Portugal that we should be signing the paperwork on and transferring the deed at the end of this month. So
Wow.
I'm in Boston right now and flying to Portugal the beginning of this next week and finalizing with the two owners. And yeah, it was a community retreat center place for about 15, 16 years. And I found it basically about 5 days after the owners decided that they wanted to sell it. So it was very good timing, good space, and it feels very aligned to how I wanted to be more grounded, still be teaching and facilitating, but having a bit more of a ground in both Asia and in Europe. So yeah, both of those are super exciting and new.
Wow, congratulations. That's huge.
Mm.
And I'm a little bit how to say this, like uh surprised by you as being someone who so travels so much for work, having two homes.
I guess there's a little bit more of a landing happening. I mean, there's also a very present conversation with my, current sweetheart about bringing some family in the world and really
Mm,
diving deeper into that. As a
mm,
mother yourself, I'm sure you have an
mm,
appreciation for that. So I feel like I'm getting
mm,
all of the grounding pieces, and now, I've already had some communication with the souls and the beings that are wanting to come through, which feels super
mm,
warm and
mm,
exciting and juicy and really alive. So yeah.
mm. Yay. Well, I can definitely recommend having a solid home base that for that. That is one of the, I mean, yeah, there was a lot happening, but that is a very big supportive element to bringing souls through is just
Mhm.
the three words I had when pregnant were safety, security, and consistency. It's just like something, and maybe stable was also, it was just like all of these words of just like, I need everything to be here and like I need to know where it is and I need it to not be changing or moving and just be like solid.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I'm feeling more of that, and also, I've always had the intention that if I am going to bring children in the world, I want a community around me, and have an amazing group of community, a few friends who are unable to have children that are excited to be
Mm,
able to support with children around. So,
mm,
yeah, it just feels like many different universal pieces all coming together. And work as well outside of the physical land project is really blossoming and growing too. So I'm
mm.
doing my best to kind of hold on for the ride as things just continue to expand and grow, which I'm very
Wow.
grateful for.
Wow. Massive congratulations. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a good ride when you're on the way up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious just to like kind of place or presence yourself. You do a lot of things. You do a lot of different things. You're an author, you're a facilitator, I think you're a coach. And I just love to give this audience a more of a like refined version of who you are, and like what how you can call yourself or consider yourself professionally. What are the main threads that you're, maybe you've done a lot of stuff, but like what are your main pieces right now that are really lighting you up?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been working as a coach and supporting people in one-to-one for the last 17, 18 years. I did a master's degree in spiritual psychology in my early 20s, and that kind of set
Mm,
the framework for my one-to-one coaching. In the last just about 8, 9 years, quite strongly, I've been facilitating in the world of Tantra, of sacred sexuality, of really somatic therapy and integrating the years before that, working more in the mindfulness space. When I was doing my master's program, I was working for a large kind of self-development publishing company. So I was doing a lot of teaching and speaking from stage and working with big groups in that way. And then was in the bubble of LA for 3, 4 years, got a bit disillusioned, went back to Hawaii and just was like, I'm going to, go back to my maritime work. I'm a merchant mariner by trade, so a ship's officer.
wow.
Um, and did that for, 3, 4 years, traveled in my time off, just had my own soul explorations, met ayahuasca. Ayahuasca was like, oh, maybe it's time to go back to this other work. I said, oh, okay. I had a girlfriend on every island. I had a very, cozy, cush, enjoyable life. But I definitely felt the pulse inside of my belly. I think it was actually
Mm,
right around that time. I remember seeing you in Booster in Bali before I was about to go down to Haydn, which was around 2017, I believe that was, sometime
probably, yeah.
2016, 17. So yeah, that really opened me up into more of this world. So my current day work, I teach with a number of different schools in the realms of sacred sexuality, practitioner training. I teach with ISTA. I teach with a group called Awaken as Love. I run annually ecstatic tantra practitioner trainings, which is really a merging of psychotherapy work with
Mm,
hands-on tantric body work, and where these two places intersect to support people who want to do one-to-one sessions on how to learn the skills to be able to support someone, the first 1 to 3 sessions before you're going into any internal work and things like that, which I think is really important in our field. I see a lot of people doing more internal genital type work far before bodies are ready for it. So that training really supports people to have a greater foundation to be able to do the deep, powerful tantric sessions as well.
mm.
um, yeah, there's a lot on my plate and a lot of things I'm doing, and yeah, and
So
always
much,
seeing where I can listen to spirit more.
so much. Wow, amazing. And out of all of it, like which is the thing right now where you like have the most juice?
Mm. Well, it's definitely in teaching, like teaching practitioners. I really enjoy helping people kind of go, up level in their skills and their framework, and how to support humans to wake up. I think our global world right now is in a massive waking up space, and the fact, that there's a conversation in the U.S. about getting rid of fluoride. I'm like, oh my God, amazing! Like, there's more waking up that's happening, like on massive levels as well. And yeah, and actually, what has recently just unfolded, which is going to be happening next year, the last probably 3, 4 years, I've been getting requests from people of like to put on a facilitation program and to teach them how to facilitate. And I have people that bug me at the end of festivals like, I want you to mentor me, and I'm like, okay, I only have 24 hours in a day. So I've recently, a friend of mine who teaches in a similar world, we actually just had a beautiful brainstorming last night about really making a much more advanced training, because a lot of the people that are coming in are already holding groups and they're working with people and they're wanting to up level their skills to kind of take it to the next framing of really how to work with the emotional and erotic body in more safe, integrous ways that helps people
Mm,
meet their erotic body, but also isn't going into a dark hole that's not filled a level of clarity and integrity. So yeah, that's just beginning to bubble up and be created. It looks like something's going to be launched right around the beginning of the year. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Wow, so much. I feel really, maybe this is the place where I feel met. When it's like, oh, a fellow so mucher.
Yeah,
Also, a fellow podcast host. You didn't even mention your podcast, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't mention the podcast. Yes, yes.
Also have a podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Once a week, releasing amazing conversations, and I'm excited to have you on there next week and a half or so. That was something that was on my to-do list for so long, and I was like, all right, I finally just like nailed it down and did it. And
Wow, amazing.
hmm.
Wow, you know, your next course should be like how to do it all. It should be like teach people to do how you're doing all of this.
I appreciate that because sometimes like my brain is like, oh, there's more I need to do
Yeah,
and
I
more
know.
impact and more things. So it's nice to receive that reflection. You're
Totally,
just like, okay,
totally.
I can take time to just rest and be, and which is what I'm really excited about with these especially the Portugal projects. One of my visions I've had is I want to spend when I'm working half of the day working on the land, working with permaculture. I used to do landscape design when I was younger, and I love working with my hands, and I love building things,
Mhm.
and I love creating gardens. So when I'm on the land in Portugal, I can be working in the garden half of the day and then doing my online work the other half of the day, which feels like very like nourishing to my earth, centered body.
Totally. Totally, it's totally the dream. It's
Mm.
completely the dream. Yeah. Yeah, and having a kid will definitely slow you down a little bit too, just in case you were looking for something, it'll bring you back. So get as much that's always my advice to people who are thinking of having kids, like, get everything done that you really wanna have done so that you can have the kid and just be like, okay, like I'm here for you. And there isn't like a new business I'm launching or like a thing. I can just focus on parenting.
Mm. Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
good advice. I'll take that in
take it
into
in.
my heart for sure.
Yeah. So a lot of your work and a lot of your teachings are around sacred sexuality and tantra. And I'm curious if there's a good story in there around how that became your path.
Mm.
Um,
Where was the transition? Yeah, good
yeah,
question. Yeah, I mean, the master's in spiritual psychology was pretty much like belly up. We didn't really deal with a lot with
yeah,
sexuality. Um, but what I found, after leaving that field and then going back to Hawaii, when I came back to really meet the world of mindfulness and transformational work, is when I met the field of Tantra. And I remember, it was right around when I met, like the first time I did an ISTA event, and I felt like I had my coaching world. So I was still doing a lot of coaching, and I had my sex life, which was, I was always quite, prolific. And it was very easy when I was very young, from 15 to, however long, it was always easy to have a lot of, erotic connections in my life. And what I recognized in a few meditations was just a realizing that so many of the deepest areas of people's shame, their fear, their guilt, their things are at the base. I mean, I had some of my own layers of that. I didn't have any strong sexual trauma as a child. I didn't have things like that. So that later on in life, when I really started to meet this field of sacred sexuality, it made sense to me to have slower somatic processing and to understand the body more deeply and to, listen to the nervous system. I had read about and understood the nervous system when I was, quite young. So this was all came quite naturally to me. And I
mm,
also saw the place where like it's good to have those slower areas, and there's the initiatory place inside of group space that I think is really important. And this is where I started to, when I could wake up more of my animal body and to be allowed to let that sexual, alive animal body come through, and astrologically, I'm a Pisces sun and a Scorpio moon. So I'm this kind of like soft, gentle poet. And then in the bedroom, it's like, there's fire. There's a lot that comes through. So I had to start to learn how to channel that effectively in the group space and be able to do it with integrity. And I realized the more and more I had to get out of my own way.
Mm,
And, I feel like I was blessed to find this work after, many, many years of having a very prolific sex life. I didn't come to teach Tantra and sacred sexuality to go get laid. I get laid a lot less, through the last many years from teaching in this field, because I've realized any moments when there's been any gray area, it's just like there's way too much of a projected field to even begin to play in. So it made me actually have to grow up even more to recognize the fragility of what happens when you're working with emotional and erotic energy. So it was really
mm.
just tracking through the years in my own life. And then when I met Tantra, I felt these two worlds come together. And I could start to realize that, the things I have learned in the bedroom, I could translate into my understanding of human behavior and my understanding of how we're evolving and growing inside a facilitated group space.
Wow. Wow, amazing. Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk to you today about integrity. That
Mm.
was a word that was coming through because I think as a male facilitator, there's a whole level of that exists, which is very different to being a female facilitator. The lines of integrity which you have to walk on and navigate are a whole different caliber. And
Mm-hmm.
then on top of that, like the turbo, like booster charge to that is that also being a male facilitator in the realms of sexuality and tantra. So, so I'd love if we zoom in there for a moment, and speak a little bit about integrity and how you've been working with integrity, as a facilitator.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this question. And, I remember when I was younger, I was looking at programs like doing a PhD in MF, marriage and family therapy, and all these different programs that basically were going to be me getting a licensure and then having some sort of board communicate what my values and integrity needed to be in order to hold that. And the thing that I love, as well as is edgy about this field that we're in, is that there is no like certified board. I mean, there's a few different groups, one of which I'm a part of, that started to create a little bit more organization with that. And I share that because where integrity comes from is inside. And the only individual, when we're showing up in a group field, that has the awareness of being in integrity is inside of ourselves. But to do that, we have to be empty enough and we have to leave our own eros aside, not in a way that we become numb, but in a way in which our own erotic desire isn't getting in the way of the growth, evolution, and expansion of the students who are coming to meet themselves more deeply. So this
Mm,
to me is where integrity comes in. It's the integrity with self. It's not trying to be integrous to an individual or to an organization or to
mm,
anyone other than really your relationship with God and yourself. And not a
mm,
religious God, but the grand organized design of this universe that we live in. And that so that integrity, when that moment comes and you have any level of hesitation or speculation that your erotic energy or my erotic energy is going to get in the way of the individual who I'm there to help, it's holding a field where I can run my current this way and I can know how to run a sphere of connecting to the divine and moving energy. But the moment I'm starting to run Eros this way and I'm in a field of power and I'm in a field of having influence on the people there, then that erotic energy, as it impacts them when I'm running it horizontally, starts to change the dynamic of the power that's there as well as the erotic containers that there. So really the integrity is something that grows and develops through time for a more seasoned, facilitator. I'd say for myself, the capacity I have to be empty and to hold a group of 40, 50, 60 people, whatever the group size is, and not to limit my erotic body. I still want them to feel that I'm alive, that there's an animal inside, but that animal isn't there making them unsafe. That animal is held inside of my own being in a way in which they can feel the reflected projection of it and actually start to empower themselves to do that more.
Mm.
And for myself, being a male body as a tantra teacher, teaching sacred sexuality in the world, there's 1,000 projections on me even before I've opened my mouth. You know, like
Totally.
I have people often when they come to retreats with me at the end of the week, we often do some type of, feedback thing. They're like, I thought you were so different. I thought you were this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, wow, you're really like friendly and easy. And, you're not trying to hit on me and all these other things. Like, thank you. I feel so safe. I'm like, I'm not trying to be the safe guy, but I'm
Mm,
also trying to
mm,
support them to get to know their own eros and their own
mm,
sexuality in a
mm.
safe way that's not diminishing them and actually creating the same shadows outside that they're existing inside of the group space. And it's a fine line. I'm always learning and evolving and seeing and expanding in what I'm able to observe with this.
Yeah, totally. I actually find myself surprised that you're with the way you're sharing, I would imagine you're getting a lot of negative projections because I imagine you would be getting a lot more positive projections.
Well, I get positive projections, but it's just because I'm a male body teaching in the
Yeah.
world of sexuality. Like I have a good reputation of integrity,
Mm,
from a variety of different schools and the places. And most of the people that come, they're like, oh, I'm coming here because X, this individual said it was a really held safe container. But people
yeah.
that don't necessarily have that experience from a friend that just observed me, they're like, oh, well, he's like this or like that. And then they recreate their own experience inside of the field. And that's, you
Yeah.
know, what I long for is that more people can come to fields like this and can leave, with less trauma than more trauma at the end of it. And to have less trauma in their body and to be able to know themselves more deeply, in my perspective, the facilitator has to be pretty empty. Has to
Mm,
be pretty empty, not empty of desire. Like I can still own desire in me, but my desires aren't getting in the way of the individual, of the participant. And this is it's a fine line to weave with.
mm, mm. Yeah, thank you for that. I really love the directionality of the verticalness with which you kind of brought it into, rather than being horizontal as you circulate that energy. I think it really helps nail the point down.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for individuals who are wanting or desiring to come into this field, what I ever say, especially if it's a male body, like there has to be a lot of ego death. There has to be a lot of like, and like it's death of desire, but not in a way that you need to become like this, disconnected individual
Yeah.
to your genitals,
Yeah.
but death of the part of you that's trying to hold a point of power so that you can, fulfill your unmet sexual needs inside of a group space. And this is, one of the groups I teach with ISTA. Like when I first was involved, there was a very different field than it is now. And there was a point actually where I was pretty well stepped away. I was probably 95% out the door. I have a couple of dear friends that I was in communication with. I was teaching with one of the other schools I teach with, which is Embodied Awakening Academy, with my ex-partner, which is a very safely held tantric field, beautiful field. And I was just kind of stepping away, but I never left completely. And then I kind of leaned back in. And right when I actually came into a place of being faculty was right when really everything blew up in that field. And through the result of, there's more nervous system understanding, there's more slower somatic processing, there's more really listening and attuning and doing resourcing inside the group space. All of that wasn't even a concept or conversation that was happening, when I first met that field. So I was like, I can bring myself here fully, and this is really evolving into more of what I would love to see in this field. So it allowed me in my own
Mm,
body to feel more safe with the gifts I want to bring in.
mm, beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant time to come in to Istad.
I mean, I trust the shamanic nature of it. I mean, literally the same month that I actually became faculty was when everything blew up. So I was just like,
Wow.
okay, there's something happening here, and I'm just going to trust the process. I'm grateful because I can leave after teaching one of those weeks and feel very deeply in my integrity and really supporting the individuals who have come for a deep transformational experience to do that and to be able to ground that into their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I love your reflections on integrity. And I'm curious, like, if you were always like that, and maybe it's because your starting point was psychology, or if there was something that happened that kind of woke that up in you. Because it's not like not so many people are in the sexuality field that just like came in with this strong integrity from the beginning. A lot of people fumbled,
Hmm.
um, particularly people who've been in for a long time who didn't start out in the last 5 years. So I'm curious, like where that sense of the strength and power, um, it sounds like also in your boundaries and your integrity came in.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely stumbled and falled when I was a much younger individual, just with, I mean, I remember being a 16, 17-year-old boy, and I began to understand the power of my eros. I could be out at a party and just make eye contact with a female body without even having any words and draw her to a room that I wanted to go make out with her with, like without any words. So there was a potency and a power that I recognized inside of me from a very young age that was never taught in some workshop space. It was just something that
Mm.
came naturally. So I realized that as I leaned into starting to teach in this field, and I could feel some reservation initially because the more that I leaned in, the more that I had to recognize a level of self responsibility inside myself. Um,
What I'm also I have kind of a funny question.
yeah.
And I think it's more of my sneaky suspicion. I mean, I'm just going to say, like, you're a very attractive man. You've named a few times also, like, you have a big sexual energy. You're also in a position of power where you're like teaching and facilitating this. I imagine that there's tons of girls like kind of throwing themselves at you. You're a very, like, in the realm of like a single available women, you would be something very special, I imagine, as a man. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you've like I guess the question behind that assumption is, do you find yourself needing to navigate a lot more of that energy that's coming towards you? And that's also what I meant earlier by the positive projection of women being like, "Oh, you know?"
Mhm.
Um, and I'm just curious how that lives in you or if that's something you're actually really navigating.
For sure. I mean, from being a very empathetic individual and leading, many groups through the last many, many years, like I can walk into a space and pretty quickly feel through the eyes of desire from those, especially female bodies that are looking at me beyond just a facilitator, and I can feel the erotic charge to that. And I've had that be approached and communicated. And for me, when that happens, especially when it's there in a participant role, I'm, just like, thank you, like honoring it, appreciating it, but not like needing it to go anywhere. Because that's the other thing about erotic energy is sometimes even for a woman to come up and to name that, like I know the level of challenges that she's probably going through just to name that. So I want to say, like, I celebrate you for naming that charge. And, the context of my role in this container isn't engaging in you this way, but I'm glad that you've named it, and we can share a dance, we can share that energy, and they
Mm,
can feel, and this is often the feedback that's come to me, so I don't just share this for myself, is that they can feel that I'm not trying to hook in. And this
mm,
is, I think, really the subtle energetics that play with the nervous
mm,
system. could say this is
mm,
fawning, would be more the term of this. And that when male bodies, and especially in a container where they're in a point of power, if they're not getting their unmet sexual needs met outside the group space, even if they recognize and they say all the right things, there's still often a part of them that's trying to unconsciously hook in, like to create something that might happen, after the group ends, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like letting actually all of that die, and just recognize and letting this individual be in the gift of their own eros without it needing to go anywhere. And what I see
mm,
over and over and over again for those beings is there's a level of freedom that comes from that. I'm like, I can be erotic, I can be alive, and I'm not going to have this man or facilitator trying to like get something from me. No, just I celebrate your eros. It's beautiful, it's amazing. And
mm,
like I feel like I can do that within myself because of the world I've come from my own personal erotic energy and how I show up professionally as well. And I will say is even